Times but says that what he saw on Saturday night was shocking.
Mount Rainier National Park is a special place to many.
Keeping an eye on these pictures of Mount Rainier right now, and if you live anywhere in that...
Magnificent, but a magnificent ticking time bomb, that is Mount Rainier. It has not erupted over 1,000 years, but scientists are up at night and seriously concerned because they can monitor it, but couldn't accurately predict when it will wreak havoc to millions of people in its surrounding areas. Why is Mount Rainier a dangerous volcano? And what other threats does it pose to Seattle and Tacoma? It's time to unearth the secrets beneath this powerful force of nature that's considered one of nature's monsters. Mount Rainier, an active volcano. Mount Rainier, located within the Cascade Range, reaches an elevation of 14,411 feet, thereby earning the distinction of being the tallest volcano in the contiguous United States. Although its most recent eruption took place roughly 1,000 years ago, the volcano is not considered inactive. It is categorized as an active stratovolcano, indicating that it possesses the capability to erupt in the future. The United States Geological Survey, USGS, closely observes Mount Rainier, recognizing it as one of the decade volcanoes, which are identified for their potential to produce catastrophic eruptions. In contrast to the dramatic eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980, the hazards associated with Mount Rainier are more insidious, yet equally perilous. Its extensive glaciers, steep inclines, and historical record of significant eruptions contribute to its distinctive threat level. Why does Mount Rainier keep scientists awake at night? Mount Rainier presents a distinctive array of challenges that contribute to its status as one of the most monitored volcanoes globally. Researchers express concern regarding its capacity for devastating consequences, influenced by a confluence of geological, environmental, and anthropogenic factors. Here are concerning reasons why this prominent mountain is a significant focus for volcanologists and experts in disaster preparedness. While others see it as a beautiful and adventure-filled destination, one in their bucket list, it's considered a serious threat, especially according to experts. Lahars, the silent killers. Lahars, or volcanic mudflows, pose a significant threat, particularly at Mount Rainier, which is vulnerable due to its extensive glacier system and steep terrain. What makes lahars especially perilous is that they can occur without a major eruption. Even minor volcanic activity, seismic events, or a sudden surge of water from melting glaciers can set off these hazardous flows. The glaciers on Mount Rainier hold vast amounts of water trapped in ice. When this water mixes with volcanic ash, rock fragments, and pyroclastic materials, it can create a fast-moving, cement-like mixture that can devastate everything in its way. Historical data reveals that Rainier has generated at least 60 lahars over the last 10,000 years, with some traveling up to 50 miles from the volcano. A notable instance is the Osceola mudflow, which took place approximately 5,600 years ago, stretching over 60 miles and engulfing areas that are now Enumclaw and reaching the Puget Sound. If a similar event were to occur today, it would wreak havoc on nearby communities, highlighting why lahars are a major concern for scientists. Densely populated regions are particularly at risk. Mount Rainier stands out among remote volcanoes due to its proximity to heavily populated regions. Communities like Orting, Puyallup, and Sumner are nestled in valleys that serve as natural conduits for lahars. Approximately 880,000 individuals reside in these high-risk areas, with millions more in nearby cities such as Tacoma and Seattle, who could face secondary threats like ashfall and damage to infrastructure. The closeness of these populations to Rainier's dangers leaves little margin for error during a disaster. Lahars can surge into populated regions within minutes to hours, depending on their origin, making early detection and swift evacuation not just crucial, but also incredibly difficult. The most significant risk posed by Mount Rainier is its capacity to unleash lahars, or volcanic mudflows, which rank among the most devastating hazards linked to the volcano. These flows can reach speeds of up to 50 miles per hour, transporting vast amounts of water, ash, and debris with a force strong enough to demolish buildings, uproot trees, and bury entire towns. Lahars present a distinct challenge as they can travel over 50 miles from the mountain by following river valleys. A historical instance is the Osceola mudflow, which occurred 5,600 years ago, covering over 200 square miles and leaving a lasting impact on the landscape. If a similar event were to happen today, It could wreak havoc on towns like Orting, Sumner, and Puyallup, as well as parts of Tacoma, where tens of thousands of residents could find themselves in the path of destruction. Compounding the threat, Lahars provide very little time for evacuation, with some flows reaching populated areas in as little as 30 minutes. Without prompt warnings and effective evacuation plans, the potential human toll could be catastrophic. Pyroclastic flows also pose a significant danger to those living near the summit. Pyroclastic flows pose a significant threat, characterized by rapidly moving clouds of superheated gas, volcanic ash, and debris. These flows can soar to temperatures around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit and race along at speeds over 300 miles per hour, releasing energy akin to several nuclear blasts. Although the destruction from these flows would be mainly confined to a 10 to 15 mile radius from the eruption site due to the unique landscape of Mount Rainier, they primarily endanger climbers, researchers, and tourists in the vicinity of the summit. Additionally, these flows could melt glaciers, leading to secondary lahars that would further amplify the destruction. On the other hand, while lava flows from Mount Rainier are generally less catastrophic than other volcanic threats, they still pose localized dangers. The thick, slow-moving lava typical of stratovolcanoes like Rainier usually extends only a few miles from the peak, yet it has the potential to obliterate nearby structures and destabilize glaciers, which could indirectly trigger lahars. Although the immediate impact of lava flows on human life would be somewhat limited, their ability to initiate secondary hazards makes them an essential consideration in assessing overall risk. Landslides and earthquakes, independent threats. One significant threat is the risk of landslides and earthquakes, which can happen independently of a volcanic eruption. Seismic activity near the volcano may compromise its steep slopes, leading to large landslides that could transform into lahars. These landslides have the potential to travel great distances, especially in the valleys surrounding the mountain, where they could engulf roads, bridges, and entire communities. This is particularly alarming for the densely populated regions in the river valleys, where both infrastructure and lives are at stake. Additionally, volcanic ashfall poses a major risk, as eruptions from Mount Rainier could propel ash clouds high into the sky. Areas within a 50-mile radius, including Tacoma and Seattle, could experience significant ashfall, leading to respiratory issues, roof collapses, and major disruptions in transportation. Depending on prevailing winds, the ash could spread over a wider area, affecting flights and agricultural activities throughout the Pacific Northwest, potentially reaching as far as eastern Washington, Idaho, and Oregon. A thick accumulation of ash could result in power outages, water contamination, and serious health hazards, especially for individuals with existing respiratory conditions. Mount Rainier as an active geological system. Mount Rainier is more than just a dormant volcano, it is an active geological entity. Situated within the Pacific Ring of Fire, this majestic mountain experiences regular tectonic activity, leading to earthquakes and volcanic disturbances. The seismic events around Rainier are common, with minor quakes offering insights into the magma movements lurking beneath its surface. Even in the absence of an eruption, these earthquakes have the potential to destabilize the mountain slopes or trigger glacial outburst floods, which could result in significant destruction downstream. Moreover, the steep and heavily eroded terrain of Rainier makes it particularly susceptible to landslides, which can transform into lahars without any volcanic activity. Recent research has shown that the magma chamber beneath Rainier is still active, with fluctuations in gas emissions and thermal activity. While these indicators do not necessarily forecast an imminent eruption, they serve as a reminder that Rainier is anything but dormant and could awaken unexpectedly. With a rich history of eruptions, Mount Rainier has not erupted in recent times, but its geological past reveals a volcano capable of explosive events. The last significant eruption, occurring around 1,000 years ago, resulted in considerable ashfall and pyroclastic flows that reshaped the surrounding landscape. Rainier is known for its dual capacity to produce both explosive eruptions and effusive lava flows. Explosive eruptions can unleash pyroclastic flows, rapidly moving clouds of hot gas and volcanic debris that obliterate everything in their path, while effusive eruptions can destabilize glaciers and lead to lahars. The challenge for scientists lies in predicting not only when Rainier might erupt, but also the nature of the eruption, as each scenario presents unique hazards, complicating preparation and mitigation efforts. Infrastructure and economic impacts. The communities around Mount Rainier depend heavily on critical infrastructure, including roads, bridges, and utilities, all of which could be severely impacted by an eruption or lahar. The port of Tacoma, a key player in international trade, is situated in the potential path of lahars, and its destruction would lead to significant economic fallout. Additionally, ashfall from an eruption could disrupt air travel, agriculture, and water supplies, affecting areas far beyond the immediate region. For instance, ash clouds could halt flights throughout the Pacific Northwest, while contamination of water reservoirs could result in prolonged shortages for nearby cities. There is a limited window for evacuation if Rainier were to erupt. One of the most concerning factors regarding Mount Rainier's threats is the short time frame available for evacuation during a disaster. Lahars can reach populated areas like Orting in as little as 30 minutes. Although early warning systems, such as the USGS's Lahar detection network, can offer some advance notice, the swift nature of these events allows for minimal response time. Emergency management strategies are established, but their effectiveness relies on public awareness, clear communication, and practiced evacuation protocols. Experts stress the importance of continuous education and preparedness to reduce casualties in the event of a disaster. Suppose you visited the trails in Mount Rainier as a tourist. Are you ready to run as quickly as possible? Potential scenarios and their devastation. Should Mount Rainier erupt, the extent of the destruction would hinge on the eruption's type, intensity, and duration. Given its historical activity, geological features, and closeness to populated regions, the consequences could be dire. Here's an overview of the possible scenarios and their devastating effects. The eruption would also have significant regional and economic repercussions. Lahars, ashfall, and seismic events could obliterate essential infrastructure like roads, railways, and bridges, isolating communities and hindering rescue and recovery operations. The port of Tacoma, a crucial trade center, is situated in a high-risk lahar zone, and its loss could send shockwaves through the economy of the Pacific Northwest and beyond. Ash clouds might disrupt air travel for extended periods, reminiscent of the 2010 Eyjafjallajökull eruption in Iceland. While water contamination from lahars and ash could leave millions without access to clean drinking water, agriculture would suffer tremendously, with crops devastated and farmland becoming unusable for years. If Mount Rainier were to erupt with the force of its past events, the devastation would be immense. Tens of thousands of lives could be at risk, especially if a large lahar occurs with little time for evacuation. Hundreds of thousands might be displaced, and the economic toll could surpass $10 billion, inflicting lasting damage on infrastructure, trade, and agriculture. The potential scale of this disaster highlights why Mount Rainier is considered one of the most hazardous volcanoes in the United States. Comparison to Mount St. Helens. The eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 stands as one of the most significant volcanic events in the history of the United States, offering a compelling contrast to Mount Rainier regarding potential devastation. On May 18, 1980, Mount St. Helens unleashed an energy release of 24 megatons, which is comparable to the explosion of 1,600 Hiroshima atomic bombs. The eruption had catastrophic effects on the surrounding landscape, resulting in a massive landslide, pyroclastic flows, and widespread ashfall that reached as far as the eastern United States. The total damages exceeded $1 billion, and the eruption claimed 57 lives while displacing thousands of residents. Despite the extensive destruction, the impact was largely limited to an area within 10 to 15 miles of the volcano, which was relatively sparsely populated at that time. In contrast, Mount Rainier, although currently dormant, possesses the potential for far more severe consequences. A key distinction between the two volcanoes lies in their geological features. Mount Rainier is a significantly larger and more active stratovolcano, rising to 14,411 feet, in contrast to Mount St. Helens' height of 8,363 feet. This increased elevation allows Rainier to generate more explosive eruptions and harbors a greater volume of magma and gas beneath its surface. Furthermore, Rainier is extensively glaciated, with over 25 square miles of glaciers adorning its summit. This aspect is particularly critical, as the interaction between molten magma and ice during an eruption could result in the rapid melting of glaciers, leading to the formation of large lahars, or volcanic mudflows. In contrast to St. Helens, where the majority of devastation was directly linked to the explosive eruption, Mount Rainier poses a multifaceted threat. This threat arises not only from the volcano's potential for explosive activity, but also from its extensive glacier system, which could rapidly melt and generate lahars, volcanic mudflows that can inundate surrounding regions with a mixture of mud, ash, and debris. These lahars have the capacity to traverse significant distances, following river valleys and impacting much larger areas, potentially reaching urban centers such as Orting, Puyallup, Sumner, and Tacoma, which collectively house tens of thousands of residents. In the event of a significant lahar occurrence, the ramifications could be extensive, potentially resulting in widespread devastation extending over 50 miles or more from the volcano. One crucial aspect to consider is how close Mount Rainier is to heavily populated urban centers. In contrast to Mount St. Helens, which erupted in a less populated area, Rainier's position near the Puget Sound region poses a direct threat to major cities like Seattle and Tacoma, where over 4 million residents live in the vicinity, including communities situated along potential lahar paths. The human toll of an eruption here could be significantly higher. The region's infrastructure, roads, bridges, power lines, and ports would likely suffer catastrophic damage, complicating long-term economic recovery efforts. While the eruption of Mount St. Helens was one of the most powerful in US history, its effects were somewhat contained due to its location and the smaller volume of glaciers and magma involved. In contrast, Mount Rainier, with its extensive glaciers, higher elevation, and nearby urban population, has the potential for much broader devastation. Should Rainier erupt with the same intensity as St. Helens, the massive amounts of materials, lava, ash, pyroclastic flows, and lahars could lead to a far greater loss of life and economic impact, overshadowing the consequences of the 1980 eruption. Climate change and the future of the Mount Rainier. Climate change is intensifying the inherent risks associated with Mount Rainier. The rise in temperatures is leading to a rapid melting of its glaciers, which heightens the chances of glacial outburst floods and lahars, even without volcanic activity. This warming also compromises the stability of the mountain's slopes, resulting in more frequent landslides and rockfalls. Furthermore, as glaciers shrink, they may reveal new volcanic vents or fumaroles, potentially changing the geothermal dynamics of the area. These developments introduce an additional layer of unpredictability to an already intricate system. The repercussions of climate change are creating significant hurdles for the mountain's ecosystems, glaciers, and the communities that surround it. These transformations are altering the landscape of Mount Rainier and jeopardizing its ecological equilibrium, with effects that ripple far beyond the mountain itself. Mount Rainier, which boasts the largest collection of glaciers in the contiguous United States, is undergoing dramatic changes due to climate change. Spanning around 35 square miles, these glaciers are crucial for regulating water flow to nearby rivers, supporting diverse ecosystems, and sustaining agriculture and hydropower. However, with rising temperatures, these glaciers are retreating significantly, with some losing as much as 25% of their volume over the last century. This decline diminishes the mountain's capacity to ensure a steady water supply to rivers like the Nisqually, Puyallup, and Cowlitz, especially during the summer months when water demand is at its peak. Consequently, drought conditions are worsening, and water-dependent sectors such as agriculture and fisheries are facing serious disruptions. Climate change is significantly heightening the geological hazards associated with Mount Rainier. The melting of glaciers is causing slope instability, which raises the risk of landslides and lahars, devastating volcanic mudflows that can severely impact communities and infrastructure downstream. Furthermore, intensified rainfall linked to climate change increases the likelihood of flooding in river valleys, posing threats to towns, wildlife habitats, and recreational spaces. The ecosystems surrounding Mount Rainier are particularly vulnerable to these climatic shifts. Alpine meadows are diminishing as tree lines ascend, affecting species that depend on these environments, such as the temperature-sensitive pika. Additionally, river ecosystems face disruptions from altered water temperatures and flow patterns, jeopardizing fish populations, especially salmon, which hold both cultural and economic significance. Moreover, climate change is altering the landscape of recreation and tourism within Mount Rainier National Park. Shorter winters and diminished snowfall impact winter sports like skiing, while extreme weather events can obstruct hiking trails and access routes. These transformations pose a risk to tourism, a vital economic driver for local communities, as the park becomes less accessible and attractive. To tackle these challenges, proactive strategies are essential, including monitoring glacial retreat, restoring river ecosystems, and the communities that surround it. The swift retreat of glaciers, heightened natural disaster risks, and disruptions to biodiversity highlight the urgent need for effective mitigation and adaptation strategies. As a beacon of resilience and natural splendor, Mount Rainier serves as a reminder of the critical challenges posed by climate change and the necessity for collective efforts to ensure its preservation for future generations. Speaking of resilience, its appeal to tourists, including enthusiasts outside Washington and even the country, continues to grow despite its hazards. The nonchalant tourists. Visitors and tourists may not be overly concerned about the issues mentioned earlier, as Mount Rainier continues to be a top choice for enthusiasts of hiking, camping, and outdoor adventures. With over 2 million visitors each year, Mount Rainier stands out as a premier destination in the Pacific Northwest. Its allure lies in the wide range of recreational activities available, including hiking, camping, climbing, skiing, and wildlife watching. The park's seasonal highlights, such as the stunning wildflower displays in summer and the picturesque snowy vistas in winter, keep tourists engaged throughout the year. The economic benefits of tourism at Mount Rainier are significant, with entrance fees, parking, and guided tours contributing to a robust revenue stream. In 2022, visitor spending in the area generated more than $80 million for the local economy, bolstering sectors like accommodation, dining, transportation, and outdoor experiences. This influx of tourism also supports many businesses in nearby towns such as Ashford, Enumclaw, and Packwood, which offer services like guided climbs, equipment rentals, and souvenir shops. Furthermore, the park creates around 1,000 jobs each year, encompassing roles from park rangers to positions in hospitality and retail, thereby enhancing the region's economic resilience. However, the surge in tourism does bring its own set of challenges for Mount Rainier National Park. The rising number of visitors can lead to resource strain, resulting in overcrowding, environmental damage, and deterioration of trails and facilities. To combat these challenges, sustainable tourism initiatives, including Leave No Trace programs, encourage responsible behavior among visitors. Additionally, revenue from entrance fees is directed towards maintaining infrastructure and restoring natural habitats. Seasonal management strategies are also in place to alleviate congestion during peak periods and promote visitation throughout the year. Tourism also plays a vital role in conservation efforts, funding projects such as glacier monitoring, wildlife habitat protection, and educational programs to raise awareness about climate change. Visitor contributions help preserve Mount Rainier's unique ecosystems, ensuring its natural wonders endure for future generations. Tourism at Mount Rainier is a cornerstone of the local economy, generating millions in revenue and supporting countless jobs. Beyond its economic impact, tourism fosters a connection to nature and supports efforts to conserve the park's fragile ecosystems. Balancing tourism growth with environmental sustainability is crucial to preserving Mount Rainier's beauty and significance. Through sustainable practices and responsible tourism, Mount Rainier can continue to thrive as a beloved destination and vital economic resource for the region. Controversy to its name. Mount Rainier is not only recognized as one of the most perilous volcanoes in the United States, but its name also ignites significant controversy. The designation Mount Rainier was bestowed in 1792 by British explorer George Vancouver to honor Rear Admiral Peter Rainier, a British naval officer, effectively replacing the mountain's original name, Tahoma or Tacoma, which was used by the indigenous Puyallup and Coast Salish peoples. For these tribes, Tahoma is deeply meaningful, translating to the Mother of Waters and symbolizing the mountain's revered status as the origin of several major rivers. Indigenous communities and advocates argue that restoring the name Tahoma is essential for honoring their cultural heritage and rectifying the historical erasure brought about by colonization. In recent years, there has been a surge in petitions and advocacy aimed at renaming Mount Rainier, drawing inspiration from the successful campaign to rename Mount McKinley to Denali in Alaska. Cultural and historical significance of Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier, the majestic stratovolcano located in Washington state, stands as a remarkable geological wonder and a significant cultural and historical emblem. For millennia, it has been revered as a sacred site by Native American tribes, a beacon of exploration and settlement, and a focal point for recreational and conservation initiatives. Its rich cultural and historical importance illustrates the blend of natural splendor, spiritual significance, and human effort, establishing it as a vital element of the Pacific Northwest's heritage. Long before the arrival of European settlers, the indigenous Puyallup and Coast Salish peoples referred to Mount Rainier as Tahoma or Tacoma. This name, often interpreted as the Mother of Waters, highlights the mountain's essential role in their cosmology, culture, and everyday existence. For these tribes, Tahoma transcended being just a towering peak. It represented a sacred site that embodied the divine and served as the source of life-sustaining rivers in the area. The mountain is deeply woven into indigenous oral traditions and mythology. Numerous stories depict it as the home of powerful spirits or a sacred domain that commands respect and reverence. These narratives underscore the profound connection between humanity, nature, and the divine, reflecting the indigenous people's deep ecological and spiritual ties to the land. Even in contemporary times, Mount Rainier remains culturally significant for Native American communities, symbolizing identity and resilience. The arrival of European settlers in the late 18th century marked a new chapter in Mount Rainier's history. In 1792, British explorer George Vancouver named the mountain after his friend Rear Admiral Peter Rainier, replacing its indigenous name. This act of renaming symbolized the imposition of colonial narratives on the landscape, a subject of ongoing debate and efforts to restore the original name, Tahoma. The mountain gained attention from explorers and settlers as a natural wonder and a challenging frontier. Early expeditions sought to map the region and study its geology, flora, and fauna. In 1870, the first documented ascent of Mount Rainier was achieved by General Hazard Stevens and Philemon Van Trump, an event that marked the beginning of its reputation as a premier destination for mountaineering and adventure, national park designation, and conservation. Mount Rainier's historical significance also lies in its role as a pioneer in conservation efforts. In 1899, it became the 5th national park in the United States, reflecting the growing recognition of the need to preserve America's natural landscapes. This designation was driven by the efforts of conservationists who valued the mountain for its beauty, biodiversity, and recreational potential. The establishment of Mount Rainier National Park set a precedent for balancing tourism with conservation. The park's trails, visitor centers, and educational programs promote public engagement while protecting its fragile ecosystems. It has since become a symbol of the broader national park movement, inspiring similar efforts to safeguard natural treasures across the country. Mount Rainier's cultural significance extends to its role as a hub for outdoor recreation and inspiration. The mountain attracts millions of visitors annually who come to hike, climb, ski, and camp in its diverse landscapes. The iconic Wonderland Trail, a 93-mile loop encircling the mountain, is a testament to its appeal as a destination for adventure and connection with nature. Artists, writers, and photographers have long been inspired by Mount Rainier's majesty. It has been featured in countless works of art and literature, symbolizing the untamed beauty of the Pacific Northwest. For many, the mountain serves as a muse, evoking awe and a sense of spiritual renewal. In recent years, Mount Rainier has become a focal point for discussions about cultural heritage and identity. The movement to restore its indigenous name, Tahoma, highlights the broader effort to recognize and honor the histories of Native American communities. This initiative parallels similar renaming efforts for landmarks across the United States, reflecting a growing awareness of the importance of decolonizing place names. Mount Rainier also serves as a cultural symbol for environmental stewardship in the face of climate change. Its rapidly retreating glaciers and shifting ecosystems are reminders of the fragility of natural wonders and the need for collective action to preserve them. The cultural and historical significance of Mount Rainier is multifaceted, encompassing its sacred role in indigenous traditions, its legacy as a site of exploration and conservation, and its enduring appeal as a source of inspiration and recreation. As a natural landmark, it bridges the past and the present, connecting diverse communities through shared admiration and responsibility. Recognizing and preserving this heritage ensures that Mount Rainier will continue to inspire future generations as a symbol of cultural identity, historical legacy, and environmental stewardship. To preserve Mount Rainier and protect nearby communities, the government monitors the volcano's activity, conducts research, and implements hazard mitigation strategies. They manage land use and conservation efforts within Mount Rainier National Park and educate the public about volcanic hazards and safety measures. These actions aim to minimize risks and ensure the safety of people and the environment surrounding the volcano. In a nutshell, while Mount St. Helens remains one of the most significant volcanic events in US history, Mount Rainier represents a far greater threat due to its combination of size, glaciation, proximity to populated areas, and the scale of possible volcanic hazards, including explosive eruptions, ashfall, and particularly lahars. Nature's power is unpredictable, but our ability to respond is within our control. Have you seen Mount Rainier in person? Would you ever dare to visit it with your friends or family? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more on the world's most fascinating and dangerous natural wonders.